The aliens mocked Earth as a dirt planet, but they would soon regret those words when the ancient human warship Valiant roared to life with devastating power. Crawford grumbled under his breath as he patrolled the derelict corridors of the Valiant. The once mighty vessel had been reduced to little more than a floating museum, a relic from an era when humanity's Starfleet commanded respect across the galaxy. Now, the ship gathered dust in orbit above Earth, a world dismissed as a primitive backwater by the rest of the universe. Crawford's resentment at his posting only deepened when the Ventaxian battle fleet arrived in the Sol system. From the bridge of his flagship, Commander Novak sneered at the sight of the Valiant, a decaying husk that symbolized the fall of human civilization. The Ventaxians had come to strip Earth of its remaining resources, confident that its inhabitants posed no threat. As Ventaxian ships began raining destruction upon key targets on Earth's surface, a desperate distress signal reached the Valiant. Crawford knew his orders were to stand down, but with his homeworld under attack, he made a fateful decision. Racing to the ship's control room, he began the sequence to bring the Valiant's long-dormant systems back online. To the shock of both Crawford and the Ventaxians, the warship thrummed with power as ancient human weapons and defenses reactivated. The Valiant, once dismissed as a useless hulk, revealed itself to be a vessel of fearsome capabilities, armed with lost technologies that rivaled those of the alien invaders. Novak watched in disbelief as the Valiant surged forward to engage his fleet. On Earth below, Crawford's defiant stand rallied a ragtag resistance of human fighters, who launched into orbit to join the battle. The overconfident Ventaxians found themselves caught off guard by the sudden fierce opposition. As the titanic space battle raged, the tide slowly began to turn in humanity's favor. Crawford's bold leadership and the Valiant's unexpected might sent the aliens reeling. But Novak, fueled by rage and humiliation, refused to accept defeat at the hands of a dirt planet and pressed his attack with ruthless determination. With losses mounting on both sides and the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, one thing became crystal clear. The Ventaxians had gravely underestimated the strength and spirit of this so-called primitive world. The question remained, would Crawford and the Valiant triumph, or would humanity's last stand be in vain? Amidst the chaos of the raging battle, Crawford frantically scans the tactical display. The Ventaxian ships are relentless, hammering the Valiant and its allies with a barrage of fire. Sparks fly from overloaded consoles and the deck shudders beneath his feet. "Sir, our weapons are running low on ammo!" shouts a crewman, his face streaked with sweat and grime. Crawford clenches his fists, his mind racing. They can't afford to lose momentum, not now. "Scour the ship," he orders. "Check every armory, every storage locker. We need anything that can shoot back." Teams of crewmen rush through the Valiant's corridors, tearing open lockers and rummaging through long-forgotten crates. In a dimly lit cargo bay, they strike gold. "Captain, we found something," the lead crewman reports over the comm. "EMP torpedoes, sir. Experimental tech from the old Earth Defense Force." Crawford's eyes widen. He's heard whispers of these weapons, but they were never deployed in combat. Untested, unpredictable, a desperate gamble. He takes a deep breath, weighing the risks. The Ventaxians are adapting to their tactics, and the human forces are taking a pounding. It's now or never. "Load those torpedoes," Crawford commands. "I want every available ship armed and ready to fire on my mark." The crew scrambles to distribute the EMP warheads among the remaining Earth fighters. Crawford opens a comm channel to the ragtag fleet. "Listen up," he barks. "We've got one shot at this. We're going to lure the Ventaxians into a kill box. Fighters, form up on the Valiant. We draw them in close, then hit them with everything we've got." Acknowledgements crackle over the comm as the human ships move into formation. The Valiant surges forward, its battered hull overflowing with the last of its armaments. The Ventaxian fleet, sensing weakness, eagerly takes the bait. They close in, their weapons primed to deliver the killing blow. "Steady," Crawford growls, his eyes locked on the tactical display. The alien ships drift into range, their hulls filling the screen. "Now!" Crawford roars. "Fire!" The human fleet unleashes a salvo of EMP torpedoes, the experimental weapons streaking through the void. They detonate in the midst of the Ventaxian formation, erupting in blinding flashes of energy. The effect is instantaneous and devastating. Electromagnetic pulses rip through the alien ships, shorting out their shields and frying their delicate systems. Weapons fall silent, engines sputter, and ships tumble helplessly. The bridge crew of the Valiant erupt in cheers as the Ventaxian fleet is thrown into disarray. Crawford allows himself a grim smile. "Press the attack," he orders. "Target their critical systems." The human ships swarm the crippled Ventaxians, picking off the vulnerable vessels with renewed ferocity. The Valiant unleashes a barrage of its own, its ancient cannons finding their mark. On the Ventaxian flagship, Novak staggers as explosions rock his ship. Consoles erupt in showers of sparks and smoke fills the bridge. His crew shout frantic damage reports, their voices edged with panic. Novak slams his fist against the arm of his command chair, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. These primitives, these humans, have outmaneuvered him at every turn. In a moment of cold clarity, Novak realizes he has severely underestimated his foe. The humans fight with a tenacity and cunning he has never encountered. They adapt, they improvise, they refuse to submit. But Novak is a warrior to the core, and he will not accept defeat. Not here, not against a backwater species from a dirt planet. He has one last card to play. "Prepare the shock troopers," Novak snarls to his second-in-command. "We're taking that human ship, even if we have to tear it apart from the inside." Within moments, Ventaxian shock troopers are suiting up in advanced combat exoskeletons, their weapons primed for close-quarters battle. They gather in the flagship's launch bay, ready to strike at the heart of the human resistance. Novak's eyes blaze with dedication as he watches his elite warriors board their assault craft. If he cannot crush the humans from without, he will destroy them from within. The battle for the Valiant is about to enter a new and bloody phase, as the Ventaxians prepare to storm the human ship in a desperate bid to turn the tide. The fate of Earth hangs in the balance, and the crew of the Valiant will soon face the fight of their lives. The Valiant's sacrifice had bought Earth a reprieve, but peace remained elusive. As Admiral Stark's ship descended through the atmosphere, tension crackled across the bridge. Beside him stood Zoran, the Ventaxian defector, who claimed to hold the key to ending the war. Stark glanced at his unlikely ally. "Ready for this?" Zoran's mandibles clicked nervously. "As I'll ever be." They touched down at Earth's Central Command, a fortress of steel and concrete. Armed guards swarmed the ship, weapons trained on the hatch. As it hissed open, shouts erupted. "Hands up, don't move!" Stark emerged first, hands raised. "Stand down, he's with me." General Hayes, Earth's military commander, stormed forward. "Have you lost your mind, Stark? Bringing one of them here?" "Sir, I can explain." "Explain?" Hayes spat. "While you've been joyriding, we've lost colonies, millions dead." The crowd of officers and politicians grew, their anger palpable. Zoran stepped into view, and the shouting intensified. "Kill it! Traitor! This is a trap!" Weapons were drawn. Stark positioned himself between Zoran and the mob. "Listen to me!" A shot rang out. Chaos erupted as people dove for cover. "Enough!" The voice cut through the din. A man pushed through the crowd, older, battle-scarred, with eyes that had seen too much. The narrator, Crawford's former second-in-command. "I served with Crawford," he said. "I saw firsthand his willingness to work with aliens when it mattered. If Stark vouches for this Ventaxian, we owe it to Crawford's memory to hear them out." His words seemed to penetrate the rage. Slowly, weapons lowered. Hayes glowered. "Fine, you have 5 minutes." In the command center, Stark and Zoran laid out their evidence. Intercepted communications, financial records, proof of a Ventaxian weapons manufacturer orchestrating attacks on both sides. "They're prolonging the war," Zoran explained. "More conflict means more profit." Doubt crept into the faces of Earth's leaders, but before they could respond, alarms blared. "Intruder alert, we have multiple..." The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Gunfire erupted in the hallway. "Assassins!" Zoran hissed. "My people aren't pleased with my defection." The narrator sprang into action, tossing Zoran a weapon. "Looks like you'll get a chance to prove whose side you're on." As chaos engulfed the command center, an unlikely alliance was forged in blood and fire. Human and Ventaxian, fighting side by side against a common foe. Each life saved, each assassin thwarted, chipped away at years of hatred and mistrust. In the aftermath, as medics tended the wounded, Stark addressed the shaken leadership. "This is bigger than our war. We've uncovered evidence of prototype weapons on Earth, powerful enough to destroy the planet. The manufacturer wants to provoke a final, apocalyptic battle." The implications sank in. General Hayes, his earlier hostility gone, leaned forward. "What do you propose?" Stark's eyes gleamed with perseverance. "We take the fight to them. A joint strike on their headquarters. Human, Ventaxian, united against the real enemy." The room buzzed with nervous energy. The narrator spoke up. "It's what Crawford would have done." Slowly, nods of agreement spread through the room. An uneasy alliance was forming, the first tentative steps toward peace. As plans were drawn up, Zoran approached the narrator. "Why did you vouch for me?" The narrator's gaze was distant. "Because I've seen too many good people die. It's time we tried something different." Together, they turned to face the challenges ahead, knowing the real battle was just beginning. The narrator stared at the tactical display, his face illuminated by the flickering red dots representing the hardliner Ventaxian forces. Alarms blared throughout the command center as reports of enemy ships breaching Earth's defensive lines poured in. "Sir, we've lost contact with outposts in sectors 7 through 12, a young lieutenant shouted over the chaos. The narrator's eyebrows furrowed. Zoran's sacrifice had bought them time, but the hardliners were relentless. He turned to face the assembled human and Ventaxian officers, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. "Listen up," he barked. "We knew this was coming. The hardliners want to crush us, to prove that our alliance is weak. We're going to show them just how wrong they are." He jabbed a finger at the display. "They're pushing hard on multiple fronts, trying to overwhelm us. But we've got something they don't, each other. Human ingenuity and Ventaxian tactics, working as one." The narrator outlined his plan, a series of lightning strikes against the hardliners' supply lines and communication hubs. As the officers rushed to their stations, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was General Hayes, his earlier hostility replaced by grudging respect. "This better work," Hayes growled, "or we're all dead." The next hours were a blur of frantic activity. The narrator coordinated attacks across space and ground, human fighters providing cover for Ventaxian shock troops as they sabotaged enemy positions. He watched with grim satisfaction as confusion spread through the hardliner ranks, their once coordinated assault faltering. But victory was far from assured. As the narrator pored over intercepted transmissions, a chill ran down his spine. He called for silence in the command center, replaying the message for all to hear. "Prototype ready. Singularity weapon. Test on human world." The room erupted in panic. The narrator raised his voice above the din. "We need to find that weapon, now." Intelligence operatives worked feverishly, cross-referencing data and following leads. Finally, a breakthrough came. The weapon's location was pinpointed to a research facility on a distant ice moon. The narrator knew what had to be done. He assembled a strike team, a mix of human special forces and Ventaxian commandos. As they prepared to depart, a towering Ventaxian warrior approached. His carapace bore the scars of countless battles. "I am Krell," he said, mandibles clicking. "Zoran was my brother in arms. I will lead this mission in his honor." The narrator nodded, recognizing the fire in Krell's compound eyes. "Welcome aboard. We leave in 10 minutes." Their ship sliced through the void, dodging patrols and automated defenses. As they approached the ice moon, the facility came into view, a sprawling complex of steel and stone carved into the frozen landscape. Alarms blared as they made their final approach. So much for the element of surprise, the narrator muttered. They touched down under heavy fire, racing from the ship as explosions rocked the landing pad. Krell took point, his massive frame providing cover as they fought their way into the facility. The corridors were a maze of twisting metal, each turn bringing new waves of hardliner defenders. The narrator's team pushed forward, their disparate fighting styles meshing into a cohesive, deadly force. Finally, they reached the central chamber. Through a reinforced window they saw it, the Singularity Bomb, a swirling vortex of impossible darkness contained within a web of energy fields. "We need to shut it down," the narrator shouted over the din of battle. "Krell, cover us." As the team worked to disable the weapon, Krell held off a seemingly endless stream of hardliners. The Ventaxian warrior was a blur of motion, each strike precise and devastating. But even Krell had his limits. A lucky shot pierced his armor, green ichor spraying from the wound. He stumbled, giving the hardliners an opening to pour into the room. "Go!" Krell roared, using the last of his strength to seal the door behind him. "Finish the mission!" The narrator worked frantically, fingers flying over alien controls as Krell's final battle raged beyond the door. With a final, desperate command, the Singularity collapsed in on itself, the weapon rendered inert. As the team prepared to evacuate, the door slid open. Krell lay there, broken but unbowed. The narrator knelt beside him. "It is done," Krell wheezed. "Remember, Zoran's dream, peace." The Ventaxian's eyes closed for the last time. The narrator stood, his perseverance hardened. But their ordeal was a long way to go. Hardliner reinforcements had cut off their escape route, trapping them in the facility. "We need a new plan," the narrator announced, his mind racing. His eyes fell on the facility's reactor core. "And I think I've got one, but it's going to be close." The narrator stood before the Joint Governing Council, his weathered face etched with concern as he delivered the grim news. The council chamber fell silent, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on both human and Ventaxian representatives. "We've detected a new threat," the narrator began, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "An advanced species known as the Nexilians is subjugating worlds on the fringes of explored space." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing images of devastated planets and vacant-eyed populations. The narrator continued, "They're assimilating entire civilizations into a collective consciousness. If left unchecked, this could lead to a conflict that dwarfs our previous war." Murmurs of unease rippled through the chamber. A human counselor spoke up, her voice tight with worry. "What do you propose?" The narrator took a deep breath. "A preemptive mission. We make contact, attempt peaceful resolution before this escalates further." Debate erupted immediately. Some argued for a show of military force, others for isolation and fortification. The narrator waited patiently as the arguments flew back and forth. Finally, a Ventaxian elder raised his hand, mandibles clicking softly. "We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. The narrator's plan offers hope without aggression. I support it." Slowly, the council came to agreement. The narrator felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders as he was tasked with leading the mission himself. Weeks later, the narrator stood on the bridge of the UVS Concordia, a state-of-the-art vessel crewed by the best of both species. As they prepared to depart, he addressed the assembled team. "We face an unknown enemy and treacherous space," he said, looking each crew member in the eye. "But together, we represent the best of our alliance. Stay sharp, stay united, and we'll see this through." The Concordia slipped its moorings, accelerating towards the uncharted regions where the Nexilians held sway. As they traversed the void, the crew encountered phenomena that defied explanation. Swirling vortexes of energy, regions where the laws of physics seemed to break down. "Gravimetric distortion ahead," called out Zhen, the human science officer. "It's tearing apart an asteroid field." The narrator gripped the arm of his chair as the ship shuddered. "Helm, plot a course around it, nice and easy." They pressed on, each obstacle testing the limits of their technology and teamwork. But nothing prepared them for their first encounter with a Nexilian-controlled world. The planet hung in space, a pale blue orb that looked deceptively peaceful. As they entered orbit, the truth became apparent. Cities stood empty, vehicles abandoned in the streets, and everywhere blank-faced individuals moved with eerie synchronicity, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Life signs?" the narrator asked, his throat tight. Krell, the Ventaxian tactical officer, chittered in distress. "Millions, but they're all reading as a single entity." The narrator's fists clenched. This was worse than they'd imagined. "We need to find the source of this. Set a course for the next system." They encountered world after world, each one stripped of its uniqueness, its population reduced to mere components in the Nexilian collective. The crew's persistence hardened with each new horror they witnessed. Finally, deep in uncharted space, they detected a Nexilian vanguard. The narrator straightened his uniform, preparing to make first contact. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let's see if we can reason with them." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a being that was more machine than organic. Its voice, when it spoke, was a discordant chorus of countless assimilated minds. "We are Nexilian. You are flawed, imperfect. Join us and be corrected." The narrator tried to explain, to offer peaceful coexistence, but the Nexilian construct cut him off. "Your individuality is a blight. It will be excised." Without warning, energy tendrils lashed out from the Nexilian ship, attempting to latch onto the Concordia. "Evasive maneuvers!" the narrator shouted. "Get us out of here!" The ship lurched as it narrowly avoided capture, streaking away at maximum speed. As the adrenaline faded, the narrator faced the grim reality of their situation. "We failed in our primary mission," he addressed the shaken crew. "But now, we know the true nature of the threat we face. We need to find the source of the Nexilian collective and shut it down." He turned to the science team. "Start analyzing the data we've gathered. Look for patterns, energy signatures, anything that might lead us to their central hub." As the Concordia plunged deeper into the unknown, the crew worked tirelessly. Days blurred together as they searched for any clue that might lead them to the heart of the Nexilian menace. Finally, after weeks of searching, they detected an anomaly. A massive structure hidden within the swirling gases of an unstable nebula. The narrator leaned forward, studying the readings. "That has to be it. Prep for stealth approach. We're going in." The narrator stood before the viewport of the UVS Concordia, his weathered face reflecting the distant stars. Years had passed since the Nexilian crisis, but the weight of responsibility still pressed upon his shoulders. A sudden chime broke the silence, and he turned to face the communications officer. "Sir, we're receiving an urgent transmission from the Horizon Explorer. They're requesting immediate contact with you." The narrator nodded, moving to the command chair. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the haggard face of Captain Lena Chen. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. "Narrator, we found something impossible." He leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Go on, Captain." Chen's hands shook as she manipulated her console, sending data streaming across the Concordia's systems. "We were charting an unexplored sector when we detected unusual energy readings. We followed them to a system with a dead star. And there we found this." The display changed, showing images that made the narrator's breath catch in his throat. Massive structures floated in the void, their design unlike anything he'd ever seen. Angular spires twisted in ways that seemed to defy physics, while vast ring-shaped constructs spanned distances greater than planetary orbits. "Our initial scans indicate these structures predate any known civilization by millions of years," Chen continued. "The level of technology, it's beyond anything we can comprehend." The narrator's mind raced with the implications. "Any signs of life?" Chen shook her head. "None. But we found evidence of a catastrophic event. Whatever wiped them out, it happened suddenly and completely." As the narrator absorbed this information, he knew immediate action was required. He turned to his second-in-command, a seasoned Ventaxian officer named Krasitk. Assemble a task force. I want our best scientists, historians, and military personnel. We need to investigate this discovery before anyone else catches wind of it. Krastik's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. It will be done, narrator. Days later, the Concordia led a small fleet of ships into uncharted space. The narrator stood on the bridge, flanked by his trusted adjutant, Varrock. The Ventaxian commander's carapace bore the scars of countless battles, a testament to their shared history. We approached the coordinates, narrator, Varrock reported, his compound eyes fixed on the sensors. The narrator nodded. Take us in slowly. We don't know what defenses might still be active. As they entered the system, the true scale of the precursor ruins became apparent. Megastructures loomed in every direction, their purpose as enigmatic as their creators. By the stars, whispered Dr. Alara Voss, the lead xenoarchaeologist. It's like nothing we've ever seen. The narrator turned to address the assembled team. I know this is overwhelming, but we have a job to do. Fan out and begin your analysis. I want every artifact, every scrap of data cataloged and studied. As the days wore on, the team worked tirelessly. The narrator watched as human and Ventaxian alike pored over alien relics, their differences forgotten in the face of this monumental discovery. It was on the 5th day that Dr. Voss made a breakthrough. She burst into the makeshift command center, clutching a data pad. Narrator, we found something, a manuscript, or what's left of it. The narrator leaned over the pad, his eyes widening as he read the translated text. An ontological manipulator, capable of altering reality itself? Voss nodded, her face pale. According to this, a group within their society gained control of it. They tried to reshape the universe but lost control. The resulting cataclysm, it destroyed everything. The implications hit the narrator like a physical blow. If such a device still existed, in the wrong hands it could make the Nexilian threat look like child's play. He straightened, his voice firm. We need to find any remaining pieces of this manipulator. Now. The search intensified, leading them to a derelict vessel suspended in the remnants of a shattered world. The narrator led a team aboard, their path lit by the eerie glow of ancient emergency systems. As they navigated through twisted corridors, dormant defense systems suddenly sprang to life. Energy beams lashed out, forcing the team to take cover. Push forward! The narrator shouted, returning fire with his pulse rifle. They fought their way to the ship's core, where a pulsing device awaited them. Dr. Voss rushed forward, her scanner humming. This is it, the core processor of the ontological manipulator. As they secured the device, alarms blared throughout the ship. The narrator's comm crackled to life with Varrock's urgent voice. Narrator, we're under attack. Unknown vessels have entered the system. They raced back to their shuttle, the precious cargo clutched tightly. As they lifted off, the narrator saw enemy ships engaging the Concordia and her escorts. Who are they? He demanded. Varrock's voice was grim. Mercenaries, outcasts. They must have learned of the precursor relics. The battle raged around them as they made for the Concordia. Enemy fighters swarmed, their weapons tearing through Allied ships. The narrator watched helplessly as a human cruiser exploded, its debris peppering their shields. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Get us back to the Concordia. Their shuttle weaved through the chaos, narrowly avoiding destruction. As they docked with the flagship, the narrator knew their victory was short-lived. Set a course out of the system, he commanded. We need to regroup and plan our next move. As the Concordia jumped to FTL, leaving the battlefield behind, the narrator stared at the recovered processor. The race to uncover the secrets of the precursors had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. He turned to Varrock, his face set with purpose. We need to find the mainframe, before anyone else does. Varrock nodded, his mandibles clicking softly. Where do we start, narrator? The narrator activated a holographic display, showing a map of unexplored space. We traced the energy signatures. The precursors left breadcrumbs. We just need to follow them. As the Concordia plunged deeper into the unknown, the narrator couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of uncovering something that would change the course of history. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. The narrator stood before the massive doors of the Precursor archive, his heart pounding. Years of searching had led to this moment. With a nod to his team, he pressed his palm against the ancient control panel. The doors groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber bathed in a soft blue light. "By the stars," Dr. Voss whispered as they entered. "Look at this place." Rows upon rows of data crystals lined the walls, each pulsing with information. The team spread out, scanning and cataloging as quickly as they could. The narrator moved to a central console, his fingers flying over the alien interface. "I've found something," he called out. "Schematics, data archives, it's all here." As the information scrolled across the screen, the narrator's eyes widened. "This can't be right," he muttered, double-checking the translations. Varrock leaned in, his mandibles clicking. "What is it, narrator?" "The ontological manipulator. It's not here. The mainframe is on a precursor warship, adrift in an uncharted nebula." The implications hit them like a physical blow. If others found this information... "We need to move, now," the narrator barked. "Download everything you can. We're leaving in 5 minutes." Back aboard the Concordia, the narrator wasted no time. He opened a secure channel to Alliance Command, requisitioning every advanced ship and skilled crew member available. Within hours, a joint human Ventaxian fleet assembled, primed for the perilous journey ahead. As they entered the nebula, the narrator stood on the bridge, watching swirling clouds of cosmic dust obscure their sensors. Anomalies buffeted the ships, threatening to tear them apart. "Steady as she goes," he ordered, gripping the command chair. "Keep formation tight." They pressed on, evading marauding ships that seemed drawn to their presence like vultures. Just as hope began to fade, a massive silhouette appeared on their scanners. "There," Varrock exclaimed, "the precursor warship!" But their elation was short-lived. As they approached, energy signatures flared to life around them. A renegade fleet decloaked, weapons already charging. "All ships, battle stations!" the narrator shouted. "We can't let them take that ship!" The void erupted in weapons fire. The narrator's fleet fought valiantly, but the renegades had the element of surprise. As allied ships fell to enemy fire, the narrator made a snap decision. "Varrock, with me. We're boarding that warship." They led a strike team across the gap between ships, magnetic boots clanging against the ancient hull. Inside, they encountered chaos. Renegade forces had already breached the vessel, and the narrow corridors became a battleground. The narrator ducked as a plasma bolt seared the air above him. "Push forward!" he yelled, returning fire. "We need to reach the central core." They fought their way deeper into the ship, the eerie silence broken only by the sounds of combat. As they neared the core, they found unsettling evidence of the renegades' progress. "They're reactivating the ship's systems," Varrock growled, examining a nearby console, "including the weapons." Before the narrator could respond, a deafening klaxon filled the air. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor in an ominous glow. "What's happening?" someone shouted. The answer came in the form of automated defense turrets emerging from hidden compartments. They opened fire indiscriminately, targeting both Allied and renegade forces alike. "Take cover!" the narrator yelled, diving behind a bulkhead. As the onslaught continued, he realized the gravity of their situation. They were trapped aboard an awakening Leviathan, with no way to control it. His mind raced, considering their options. There was only one choice. "We need to destroy the ship," he said, turning to Varrock. "Overload the reactors. It's the only way to ensure the manipulator never falls into the wrong hands." Varrock's compound eyes met the narrator's gaze. "Someone will have to stay behind to trigger it manually." A heavy silence fell between them. Then, with a resigned nod, Varrock spoke. "I'll do it." "Varrock, no!" The Ventaxian raised a clawed hand. I have seen too much bloodshed caused by weapons like this. No more. The future of our alliance rests with you, old friend. Emotion threatened to overwhelm the narrator, but he pushed it down. There was no time. He clasped Varroc's arm in a warrior's grip. It has been an honor, he said, his voice thick. The honor was mine, Varroc replied. Now go. Save our people. The narrator turned, rallying his remaining forces. Fall back to the shuttles. We're leaving. As they fought their way back through the ship, the narrator couldn't shake the weight of Varroc's sacrifice. But there would be time to mourn later. For now, they had to survive. Decades passed since the ontological manipulator incident, and the human-Ventaxian alliance flourished. Scientific breakthroughs and cultural exchange marked an era of unprecedented prosperity. The narrator, now a seasoned diplomat, sat in his office on the joint capital world of New Harmony, reviewing reports from deep space probes. His eyes widened as he scanned the data. Computer, verify these readings. Confirmed, the AI responded. Anomaly detected in Sector 7 Alpha. Mass and velocity consistent with an extinction-level event. The narrator's blood ran cold. He activated the emergency comm channel. This is the narrator. Convene the Joint Council immediately. Hours later, he stood before the assembled leaders of the Alliance. Humans and Ventaxians alike listened intently as he outlined the threat. An asteroid field of unprecedented size is on a collision course with our systems, he explained, projecting a holographic model of the incoming devastation. If we don't act, billions will die. Murmurs of fear rippled through the chamber. A human counselor spoke up. What do you propose, narrator? We intercept and divert it, he replied. I'm calling for the assembly of the largest fleet in our history. Every ship, every resource we can spare. The council chamber erupted in a flurry of activity. Within days, an armada unlike any ever seen before assembled in orbit. The narrator stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, surveying the vast array of vessels. All ships report ready, sir, his first officer, Commander Elena Chen, reported. The narrator nodded. Signal the fleet. We move out. As they approached the asteroid field's projected path, the true scale of the threat became apparent. Massive chunks of rock and ice tumbled through space, each one capable of devastating an entire world. By the spirits, whispered Krasik, the Ventaxian weapons officer. I've never seen anything like it. The narrator's teeth clenched. All ships, open fire. Target the largest asteroids first. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space, impacting the cosmic debris. But for every rock they destroyed, dozens more loomed behind it. It's not working, Chen reported, her voice tight. Our weapons barely scratched the surface. The narrator watched as Allied ships were battered by the relentless onslaught. He turned to his chief engineer. We need a new approach, something big enough to affect the entire field at once. The engineer's eyes lit up. A graviton array. If we can generate a field large enough, we might be able to divert the whole thing. Do it, the narrator ordered. I want every available ship working on this. We'll cannibalize the hulls of decommissioned vessels if we have to. As construction began, reports flooded in from the outer colonies. The first wave of asteroids had struck, forcing mass evacuations. The narrator worked tirelessly, coordinating rescue efforts while overseeing the array's construction. Finally, after weeks of frantic work, the massive structure was complete. A latticework of repurposed ships and cutting-edge technology stretched out before them, dwarfing even the largest vessels in the fleet. All systems online, Chen reported, ready to engage on your command. The narrator took a deep breath. Activate the array, full power to the gravitic field. Energy surged through the construct. A shimmering field expanded outward, enveloping the incoming asteroids. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the trajectory of the cosmic onslaught began to shift. It's working, someone shouted. But their elation was short-lived. Warning klaxons blared across the bridge. Sir, the array is destabilizing, Chen reported urgently. The power output is too much. We can't sustain it. The narrator's mind raced. They were so close. He made his decision. Evacuate all non-essential personnel, he ordered. I'll stay behind with a skeleton crew to complete the diversion. Chen's eyes widened. Sir, that's suicide. It's the only way, he replied firmly. Now go. That's an order. As escape pods launched from the surrounding ships, the narrator took his place at the array's control center. He watched the monitors as the asteroid field continued to bend away from Alliance space. Warning lights flashed all around him. The array was reaching critical mass, but they were almost there. Just a little longer, he muttered, his hands flying over the controls. In the final moments, as the array's energy reached its peak, the narrator allowed himself a small smile. The asteroid field hurtled past, missing the Alliance worlds by a hair's breadth. Then, in a blinding flash, it was over. Centuries passed, and the human Ventaxian alliance flourished, expanding across the stars. On a quiet morning in the heart of Allied space, alarms blared through the command center of New Harmony. Admiral Thora Chen, great-granddaughter of the legendary narrator, rushed to her station. "Report," she barked, her eyes scanning the holographic displays. Lieutenant Krask, a young Ventaxian officer, spoke up. "Admiral, we're detecting massive spatial distortions in the outer rim. Early warning probes are going dark." Thora's blood ran cold. She opened a secure channel to the Alliance Leadership Council. "This is Admiral Chen. We have a Code Black situation. I repeat, Code Black." Within hours, the council chamber filled with grim-faced leaders. Thora stood before them, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "The threat we face may surpass even the Nexilians," she said, projecting images of the spreading distortion. "We're dealing with an ancient, malevolent intelligence." Counselor Voss, an elderly human, leaned forward. "What evidence do we have?" Thora played intercepted transmissions from the affected sectors. Screams and pleas for help filled the chamber, abruptly cut off mid-sentence. Entire colonies are falling silent. Those who survive report a psionic contagion that overrides neural pathways. The room erupted in panicked discussion. Thora raised her voice to be heard. "We've initiated quarantine protocols, but the contagion is spreading exponentially. Our fleets are establishing a defensive perimeter, but we need more." "What do you propose, Admiral?" asked Counselor Zartak, her mandibles clicking nervously. Thora took a deep breath. "A preemptive strike. I've assembled an elite task force to penetrate the psionic wavefront and locate its source." The council chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. "Do it," Voss said, his voice heavy with the weight of billions of lives. "May the spirits of our ancestors guide you." Aboard the stealth frigate Defiant, Thora briefed her team. Scientists, soldiers, and scions from both species stood ready for the mission. As they approached the affected zone, the ship's sensors crackled with interference. "Psionic shielding at maximum," reported the helmsman, "but it won't hold for long." Thora gripped the command chair. "Take us in." The Defiant plunged into the maelstrom. Outside the viewports, space itself seemed to warp and twist. Crew members clutched their heads, fighting off waves of psychic pressure. "There," shouted the science officer, "a planetoid, heavily fragmented. It's the nexus of the distortions." As they entered orbit, Thora's eyes widened. The surface was a graveyard of alien architecture, remnants of a civilization long dead. "Prepare for landing," she ordered. "Full psionic dampening fields." The moment they set foot on the blasted surface, Thora knew they'd stumbled upon something monumental. Ancient databanks, still partially functional, revealed the horrifying truth. "This entity," she breathed, reading the translations. "It caused the extinction of the precursors. They couldn't contain it." A psychic scream tore through their minds. In the distance, humanoid shapes shambled towards them, avatar constructs of the malevolent intelligence. "Fall back!" Thora shouted, drawing her weapon. "We need to destabilize the spatial nexus." The battle was brutal and swift. Thora watched in horror as her team members fell, their minds consumed by the entity's influence. With their last ounce of strength, the survivors triggered the Defiance reactor overload. As the ship imploded, creating a temporary subspace bubble to contain the entity, Thora and the handful of remaining crew members fled in escape pods. She knew it wouldn't hold for long. Back in Allied space, Thora delivered her report to a stunned council. "We've bought ourselves time," she said, her voice hoarse, "but it won't be enough." As if in response to her words, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The subspace bubble had ruptured. Across countless worlds, trillions of minds cried out in terror as the entity's consciousness flooded forth. Thora watched helplessly as colony after colony fell silent, their inhabitants subsumed into the hive mind. Even the strongest psychics crumbled under the onslaught. In the chaos, a plan began to form. Thora turned to the council, her eyes blazing with desperate purpose. "We have one option left. Psychic resonance charges, detonated at key points within the compromised systems." "But that would require—" Counselor Voss trailed off, realizing the implications. Thora nodded grimly. "A suicide mission. We'll need volunteers to arm the charges from within the affected zones." The room fell silent. Then, one by one, the descendants of legendary heroes stepped forward. Thora among them. "We'll do it," she said, her voice unwavering. "For the Alliance, for all sentient life." As the volunteers prepared for their final mission, Allied fleets engaged the subsumed armadas, buying precious time. Thora stood before her team, her heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. "We may not survive this," she said, looking each of them in the eye. "But we will not go quietly into the night. We are the last line of defense against oblivion. Are you with me?" A resounding chorus of agreement filled the air. With a final salute, they boarded their ships and plunged into the maelstrom of psionic energy that now engulfed entire sectors of space. Thora's vessel shuddered as it entered the compromised zone. Outside, reality itself seemed to bend and warp under the entity's influence. She gritted her teeth, fighting against the psychic pressure threatening to overwhelm her mind. "Stay focused," she commanded her team. "We have a job to do." As they descended towards the first nexus point, Thora caught a glimpse of the horror they faced. Billions of minds, once individuals, now merged into a single, all-consuming consciousness. The entity's avatar loomed before them, a colossal form comprised of countless absorbed psyches. Thora's hand hovered over the detonator. She thought of all those who had come before, the narrator, the crew of the Valiant, and countless others who had fought to preserve the freedom of sentient life. "For the Alliance," she whispered, and pressed the button. The psychic resonance charge detonated, sending shockwaves through the psionic field. For a brief moment, the entity's grip loosened, but it was far from defeated. As Thora and her team raced to the next nexus point, they knew their time was running out. The entity, enraged by their defiance, redoubled its efforts to crush the last embers of resistance. The battle raged across the stars, a desperate struggle for the very soul of the galaxy. And as the final confrontation loomed, Thora Chen, descendant of legends, prepared to make her last stand against the encroaching darkness.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.